In our last chapter, we met Edgar, a capable and peaceable enough ruler whose reign kept the Viking threat at bay. But perhaps Edgar's biggest failing was his inability to pave the way for a smooth transition of power after his reign. Upon his death in 975, the succession turned stormy again. Edgar left behind 2 sons, Edward, his elder by a first marriage, and Ethelred, his younger by Queen Elfrith. Both had royal blood, but only one had a mother already scheming at court. At Edgar's death, the succession could truly have gone either way. Edward had the stronger claim by age and lineage, but Elfrith had powerful allies and a hunger for influence. The court split. The Archbishop Dunstan and many nobles backed Edward, but other factions resisted, preferring a younger and more pliable heir. Despite these tensions, Edward was crowned. He was barely a teenager, and though technically king, he ruled over a realm pulling in opposite directions. The monasteries that had thrived under Edgar's patronage were now targeted by jealous nobles seeking land. Well, depending on who you asked. Remember that aside on Benedictine reform in the last chapter on Edgar the Peaceable? Well, as part of this reform, a lot of nobles had been forced, or at least pressured, to give up their land to the monasteries. Now that Edgar was gone, they wanted it back. But Edward supported the church and the monasteries in this dispute, which made him some enemies. Regardless, Edward's reign would last just 3 years. In 978, while visiting his half-brother Ethelred at Corf, Edward died suddenly. The story goes that he was offered a drink, stabbed in the back as he dismounted his horse, and left to die alone. Possibly even tangled in his stirrups, dragged through the dirt. No one was ever formally blamed, but the suspicion was clear. His stepmother, Queen Elfrith, had the most to gain, and her son Ethelred became king within the year. Edward's alleged murder was shocking but not unique. In this age, royal succession was a game played with knives and sometimes even with fire pokers. It wasn't unusual for potential rivals to be blinded or maimed, methods used to disqualify them from the throne without technically spilling royal blood. According to custom, a king had to be whole in body and spirit. A blind man, it was believed, could not rule. So when you couldn't outclaim your rival, you could unmake him instead. That logic would haunt English politics for decades, and thus Edward's death, whether plotted or simply permitted, sent a chilling message through the monarchy. No claim to the crown was safe from backdoor intrigue or mutilation. The threat to England's crown wouldn't always be foreign. It could also come from within, the court factions, clashing ambitions, and a royal line vulnerable to manipulation and betrayal. Edward's brief and brutal reign foreshadowed the chaos that would characterize his half-brother's reign. In fact, his death was one of the first causes of that chaos. Ethelred was crowned under a cloud of suspicion, haunted by a crime many believed had cleared the path for him. And as we'll see in the next episode, it poisoned the legitimacy of the crown before Ethelred ever really had a chance on it. And yet, Edward's legacy lived on through piety. He was venerated as a martyr, someone who died in defense of his faith, within a decade of his death, and cults formed around him. Some called him a saint, a royal victim of noble corruption. Others simply remembered a boy who stood in the wrong place at the wrong time. His reign and his life were short, but Edward the Martyr revealed a hard truth of the age, that in England, the knife could strike from inside the house just as easily as from across the sea.